society's history reveal its cultural and political circumstances. I stand here before you on this stage to tell the story of one woman's life as told by my clothes. Why are these two images so significant? Because knowing nothing else, my clothes tell the bigger story of the Iranian Revolution. We make fashion choices to express our identity and culture. But what if you live in a society that dictates a dress code that is not in line with your beliefs? The Iranian Revolution of 1979 had a rippling effect on women's rights and how and what they could wear. In the 1970s, I was a fashion-forward teenager who wore the latest Western trends, miniskirts and bell-bottom pants with fitted shirts and stylish dresses. Fast forward a few years, and in the 1980s, I wore a strict version of hijab for 8 years. I was cognizant to cover every strand of my hair and wore loose clothing in drab colors of navy, black, brown, or gray over my body. The history of fashion in my birth country, Iran, has long been the sign of something else. First, as a public way of implementing secular political values, and then as a public way of implementing religious ones. In 1936, Reza Shah, the first Pahlavi monarch to modernize the country, imposed a decree that banned hijab on women who had been veiled for centuries by state mandate. Being veiled in public became a crime and could get a woman arrested. Some women opposed these new restrictions and preferred to stay home as much as possible. A few years later, when Mohammad Reza Shah, the second Pahlavi monarch who became king, he continued to take Iran towards secularism and preserving the monarchy. The Shah, meaning king, lifted the prohibition of hijab, and women had a choice to dress as they wished. However, they were encouraged to dress as their Western counterparts. The Iranian women wore colorful suits and sharp dresses in their positions as judges or members of the parliament. In the Iran of my youth, women were free to dance away the night in the city discos, sunbathe their skin on the Caspian Sea shores, and become celebrity singers. At times, Iranian women were ahead of their European counterparts. For example, the Shah gave women the right to vote in 1963. That is 8 years before Swiss women were granted the same privilege. Queen Farah epitomized elegance and chic. In the official portrait of the royal family displayed on the walls of our classrooms, banks, shops, and offices, I would admire Her Majesty's custom-made and elegant designer dresses. Fashion magazines, such as the German language Burda, inspired patterns for the seamstresses and tailors to follow. The most popular of women's magazines, Zan-e Roz, Today's Woman, sponsored the Dokhtar Shayeste pageant, which was the equivalent of Miss America, the Iranian equivalent of Miss America. One year, a distant cousin of mine became one of the 20th finalists, and she actually won the category of Iran's best-dressed girl. Young girls flocked to the beauty salons to recreate the hairstyles of the icons of the day, especially the Iranian diva Gugush and the American sex symbol Farrah Fawcett. But everything changed in the pivotal year of 1979. The king's nemesis, a cleric by the name of Ayatollah Khomeini, steered a revolution from afar that gained rapid momentum. The miniskirt now seemed offensive and contrary to the sanctity of cultural and religious beliefs. On the eve of the Iranian Revolution, people yearned for democracy and more opportunities. They chanted Istiqlal, Azadi, Jumhuri Islami, independence, freedom, and Islamic Republic. But no one knew what an Islamic Republic would entail, because Iran had been a monarchy for the past 25 centuries. Some women donned headscarves and wore loose clothing to exert their political influence and to express their defiance to the status quo. In their case, their hijab symbolized a rebellion against the establishment, the monarchy, and its deference to the West. Until then, I had rarely seen women or girls in thick headscarves that covered part of their forehead. Traditional women had been content with wearing the chador, a full body-length, lightweight fabric that cascaded from the top of the head to the tiptoes. The wearer's grip held the substantial material at the nape. These women opted to wear the hijab as a sign of modesty in the presence of men who were not related to them. At almost 18, I witnessed the last king of Iran leave the country and end 2,500 years of monarchy. A new leader came back from exile in France, and Iran became an Islamic Republic. Seemingly overnight, the newly founded regime adopted a new constitution, altered the nation's flag, and replaced the national emblem. They subjected women to new draconian rules in regards to relationship, how to dress, and how to behave. On May 8th of that year, tens of thousands of women protested the new mandatory veiling for women in the workforce. That day coincided with International Women's Day. But soon after, the Islamic dress code of mandatory Islamic dress code was imposed on all women. As a Jewish woman, I too was forced to wear the hijab. But instead of the chador, I opted to wear the long and loose manteau, a button-down coat, with the maqna'eh, which is an oversized headscarf that also covered the upper front of the body. The warning, "Sister, guard your hijab," was ubiquitous. Now being unveiled in public became a crime that would get a woman arrested. Special morality police units roamed the streets to enforce the law. They confronted immoral-looking women, harassing them, and at times arresting them. Now, males and females had to be separated in the schools, on the beaches, in buses, and hair salons. Women could no longer become judges or sing, dance, or ride a bike in public. When my daughter started first grade at the age of 6, she too was required to wear the hijab. I could not braid her hair, I could not style it in a ponytail, or keep the sides in place with colorful barrettes. In 1987, my family immigrated to the United States and settled in Houston. I went from wearing miniskirts to hijab, and then from hijab to cowboy boots. I could finally dress as I wished. Today, the definition of hijab has become more flexible in Iran than it was a few decades ago. Yet some women are still opposing the restrictions and are pushing the boundaries with what is acceptable under the law. Some of them have gone so far that they have removed their headscarves and waved them on sticks for passerby to see. In both instances of 1936 and 1979, the government dictated the dress code. This may be a foreign concept to those who live in the West, because we utilize fashion as a means to express our beliefs and thoughts free from government censorship. The joy of fashion is to make a choice. When that choice is taken away from us, we lose our freedom of expression. Choosing what you wear every day is a privilege not to be taken for granted.